Dawn crossbow builds, yeah.
Hello world, welcome to Grim Dawn Crossbow Builds, where all we talk about are crossbow builds for Grim Dawn. Today we're looking at a Dervish, which is the combination of an Oathkeeper and a Nightblade. We are using Gildor's Pulverizer for Pierce Vire's Might and Ring of Steel. This is basically a melee build with a crossbow. It's very fun and very fast. First off, we have an assortment of player-scaled pets, Guardians of Empyrean, Blade Spirits, and a Deathstalker from our Deathstalker relic. Pneumatic Burst is our healing buff, Ascension is our temporary buff, Blade Trap is our debuff on enemies, and our main active skills are Vire's Might and Ring of Steel, supported by Amarasta's Blade Burst. So there's a lot going on here. It's a bit of a piano build. Let's look at our skills. Our main one is Vire's Might converted to pierce damage. This is at the hard cap and triggers the Assassin's Mark for resistance reduction. Pierce has no damage over time, so we're also looking at some internal trauma here. Volcanic Stride is a bit above the soft cap with all fire converted to pierce. Again, damage over time is not converted, so we also have burn damage. And Tectonic Shift is also at the hard cap, reducing our cooldown, giving us more range, and adding bleeding damage. We have one optional point in Summon Guardian of Empyrean. This isn't doing very much. We have another optional point in Smite because we are doing occasional default attacks during our cooldowns. At the bottom are some more important things. Presence of Virtue gives us OA, and Wayward Soul is bound to this. Haven gives us health and increased healing, and Rebuke is over the soft cap, giving us physical damage which is converted to pierce and reflected damage reduction. Resilience gives us DA and added resistances at low health, and Ascension gives us global damage absorption on a cooldown. Its modifier, Clarity of Purpose, also gives us OA while the buff is active. On the Nightblade side, Ring of Steel is our main skill. This gives us a large burst of piercing damage in a radius around us and triggers the Shifting Sands. Naturally, this is at the hard cap, as is Circle of Slaughter. This scales our pierce damage and adds bleeding and crit damage. Our buff attack is Amarasta's Blade Burst, which triggers Ren for bleeding resistance reduction. We just have a single point here to open up its modifier, Lethal Assault. This flat, cold, and acid damage is mostly converted to pierce, giving a noticeable boost to our main attacks. Our active debuff skill is Blade Trap. The main purpose of this is to lower enemy DA for a second or two so we can get some big Ring of Steel crits. This is great on mobs and sometimes works on bosses too. Its modifier, Devouring Blades, gives us Pass-Through and Life Leech. If this feels like too many buttons to press, feel free to leave out Blade Trap and the Blade Burst, and you can sink those points into Blade Spirit. That would make the gameplay less frenetic and power up our passive DPS. Last but not least, we've got our passive buffs and debuffs. Pneumatic Burst restores our health, scales our pierce damage, and gives us OA, health regen, and total speed. Pierce damage was just added in a recent patch, and it definitely helps this build. Shadow Dance is at the hard cap, giving us DA, dodge chance, and trap resist. And Elemental Awakening has a few points in it for the elemental resistance. Our passive debuff is Veil of Shadow. This lowers enemy OA and slows them down. Inspiration is bound here. Its modifier, Night's Chill, is our main source of pierce resistance reduction. Phantasmal Armor is sitting pretty comfortably at 15 points. The most important thing here is the bonus armor, which applies to all of our gear slots. The Energy Leech and secondary resistances are also useful. And we've got one last point in Anatomy of Murder for the bleeding damage and cunning. Let's take a look at our devotions. Our tier 3 goal is Azrakah the Eternal Sands. I prefer this to the Unknown Soldier because we have enough player-scaled pets already. Starting out, we can put a point in yellow for the Assassin's Blade and the Lion. The Assassin's Mark is an important source of pierce resistance reduction. After that, you can put a point in blue to pick up the Eel. That gives us a lot of blue affinity points and boosts our dodge chance. Then you can put a point in purple and pick up the Harpy or the Empty Throne, whichever one you prefer. That will allow you to take Harvestman's Scythe for stats, regen, and DA. From there you can go up and take the Bard's Harp. This offers us the inspiration proc for OA, DA, and trap resistance. If you're leveling with swords, which you might be doing, you can pick up Blades of Nadan right over here. Or if you're leveling with axes, which is also a possibility, you can go over to the west and take the Berserker. To get the Berserker, you'll first have to take a point in green and pick up something like the Raven or the Spider. After that, you can go up and take the Chariot of the Dead, which is a really good OA and DA boost on any character. We can also stick a point in red to go down and take the Huntress for bleeding resistance reduction. This is not strictly necessary as we're prioritizing pierce damage and not bleeding, but we do have a pretty substantial amount of bleeding as well. When you get to level 84 and you can finally equip your Gildor's Pulverizer, you can refund whatever is not shown here and start building out the Kraken and the Hydra. Azra-Ka will likely be your very last one. Let's check out our items. Our weapon is Gildor's Pulverizer. This is a very strange crossbow that gives extra range and piercing damage to Vire's Might. The most important stat to look for here is skill cooldown reduction. The maximum roll is 19%, which is quite substantial. If you have multiple copies of the weapon, I would prioritize that. But of course, any copy will work just fine. It also offers flat health, +2 to all of our skills, global elemental to piercing conversion, and local piercing conversion for Blade Spirit. In the helm and chest armor slots, we've got 2 pieces of the Gore Drinker set. The main benefit here is a further flat reduction in our cooldown for Vire's Might. It also scales our pierce and bleeding damage. Gore Drinker only drops in the Shattered Realm, so you'll probably be using some more accessible gear first. We'll talk about that when we get to the leveling section. Our amulet is the Bloodbrier's Thorn. We're using this to reduce the cooldown on Ring of Steel and buff its crit damage. I would look for whatever affixes help balance your resistances. This is a monster infrequent from Old Bloodbriar, an optional quest boss in the Shaded Basin next to the Pine Barrens. For rings, we've got 2 copies of the Mythical Minerion. These don't scale pierce damage, but they do allow us to hardcap Vire's Might, Shadow Dance, and Tectonic Shift. They also give us some pretty hefty armor bonuses and good resistances. These are a random drop. In the shoulder slot, we have Musalaki shoulder guards. The base item buffs Ring of Steel and Vire's Might. The prefix is not important, but you definitely want the suffix of Vicious Barbs. That gives an additional 2 skill points to Ring of Steel. This doesn't make or break the build though, so feel free to use whatever affixes you find. My second best suffix was of Balanced Steel, which gives a Ring of Steel proc instead of points to the actual skill. That's also decent. I generally find these shoulder guards in the Shattered Realm, but if you want a guaranteed drop, you can grind Nemesis status with the Arkovian Undead and run the Steps of Torment. Musalaki will always show up there. Our gloves are the Mythical Grasp of Unchained Might. These don't scale pierce damage, but the flat physical is converted to pierce. The main attraction here is 50% weapon damage and extra resistance shred on Ring of Steel. This gives us full uptime on flat resistance reduction. These ones are a random drop, but I do see them a lot. Our boots are the Galewind Treads. These buff Vire's Might and Clarity of Purpose and cap our freeze resistance. In the metal slot, we have the Gutworm's Mark. This comes from Gutworm, a hidden boss in the Burwitch outskirts. Again, I would look for whatever affixes round out your build. This one buffs our health and Amarasta's Blade Burst. Our belt is the Mythical Pack of Treacherous Means. This one can be crafted from a blueprint. The main benefit is acid and elemental to pierce conversion, which is relevant for our lethal assault buff and our fire damage on Vire's Might. It also offers some flat piercing damage. Our relic is Nemesis, buffing all Nightblade skills, scaling our pierce damage, and giving us another player-scaled pet. And our pants are Kubacabra's Chouses. These buff Lethal Assault and Tectonic Shift. If you get the suffix of Vicious Barbs, you'll also get +2 to Ring of Steel. These I also usually get in the Shattered Realm, but you can get a guaranteed drop by grinding Nemesis status with beasts and running the Ancient Grove. And now for a few words on leveling. Nightblade is a much better leveling mastery than Oathkeeper, so you definitely want to start on the Nightblade side. I would take dual blades on the top left of the skill tree and dual wield some melee weapons. The honed longsword is a blacksmith recipe that you can craft very early. This buffs Shadow Strike, which comes online a lot faster than Vire's Might, so you might consider using it. If you're up for a hard fight, you might also consider taking on the brawlers in the Four Hills area. They have a chance to drop the Pitmaster's Axe, which is the earliest item with a skill cooldown bonus to Ring of Steel. It also converts the Pierce to physical damage, but it'll still work perfectly well. Also in the areas leading up to Cronley, you'll start seeing these black armor pieces, the Murderer's Epaulets, Murderer's Breastplate, and the Murderer's Cowl. These items buff Blade Trap, Ring of Steel, and Shadow Strike, and they're also weighted towards pierce damage affixes. Cronley himself will also drop a signet that buffs Circle of Slaughter. When you get up to Homestead, you can also pick up a Harvest Blade Seal if you have the reputation for it. This buffs pierce damage and the Whirling Death weapon pool skill. You can also get a blueprint from the Black Legion for a pierce damage Nightblade belt. You can also pick up our Endgame amulet and medal at lower levels. If you don't feel like fighting Gutworm, Harvul is a little easier, and his medal gives flat physical damage, which is converted to pierce for Vire's Might. The rest of your gear will probably be generic leveling stuff like Homestead boots and gloves, Hidden Path pants, and whatever blues drop that are relevant for your build. In the early endgame, you can look at some higher level faction gear like the Guardian Cuirass from Barrowholm or the Destroyer Headguard from Malmuth. Before I got the Goredrinker helm, I crafted a Mythical Whisper of Secrets, which is kind of an upgraded Murderer's Cowl. Whenever you get your Pulverizer, or maybe before, you can drop Shadow Strike and pick up Vire's Might instead. Okay, time for an SR run. This was a really fast one.